viewers, and welcome back to the South Main Auto Channel. Got a 2010 Pontiac G6 GT. The big 3.5 in it. Needs a right front wheel bearing. So I thought I'd bring you guys along and test out our sweet new camera we got. So the old camera is taking too many trips off the tool cart, so we had to get a new one. It's actually only my third one I've had since I started doing YouTube. So we'll see. I've always used little Sony Handycams. This time I've got a little Canon. I don't know the model number, I'd tell you. But at any rate, onto the video. I already pulled the brake caliper off because this vehicle's getting front brakes too, so I had to see if this caliper was any good prior to ordering my parts. So needless to say, we've already skipped steps 1 and 2, and 3 probably, where you remove the wheel, take the caliper off. But, like I said, this one's getting new pads too. These are just about spanked. Customer wants to do them now. It's the best time to do them. You're already doing the wheel bearing, so there's no extra labor involved because you've already got to pull the brakes through the bearing. They can pull the brake hardware off also. This new camera is weird. It's like extra zoomed in. We'll see. Hopefully it works good. Had good reviews. So I'm going to pull the caliper bracket off with a 15 mil, it looks like. Get that up out of our way. It's pretty standard stuff. You guys have seen me change lots of wheel bearings. They're all pretty much the same. I'd move the camera and get you back in there for some sweet shots, but I don't want to christen the new camera with the salt water just yet. I'd like to try to get at least a year out of it. Came off way too easy. And I bought this camera too because it had an external mic input on it. And I bought a mic, and the mic is junk. Harbor Freight for the win. But I didn't want my initial test drive of the camera on some super important video. Find out that it sucked. Come on. The only thing I don't like about it, it's all touchscreen. Where the Sony wasn't. So the bolts that hold the wheel bearing on are 13 mil. Crack them little guys loose first. Okay, and be careful not to rip your CV boot while you're back here. I like to use a short socket and a 3-inch extension. Seems to be the right combo, I guess. It's getting just that temperature where it's going to start peeing on you. Try to work quick in the wintertime. Alright, there's those two. I gotta move it. There we go. Grab my socket. I'm so unorganized. Last bolt, only 3 bolts. Now, got the ABS wire here. Take it, unplug that. Set that to the side. Then we've got to undo the connector here. This probably has a little bit of grit under it. There we go. Come on, fella. You can probably just break these tabs off. It does come with a new clip, but then if you break the clip on the new one, now you've got a spare if you don't break that one. It's about to get real. Ah, big nasty. There's most of it. You got a screwdriver. There's the wheel speed sensor. It tends to stick in the hole. So now we got to clean it out. We'll use our 216 QL Astro and our 2181 Astro burrs. Pretty fancy little bit of kit. And this has its own arbor lock on it, which is pretty slick. So we'll put our burr in there. Tighten the spec. Release the lock. And hold on. Now don't go hog wild, this is only aluminum. Cut through the corrosion and then put the brakes on. Looks good, baby. You're also going to want to look at the dust shield, make sure there's no collateral damage from the air hammer, which we look good here. So we'll just take and wipe some of the schmutz off this baby. Sometimes your air hammer bit will slip and put a little ding in this, which is no big deal. You just straighten her out and you're good to go. So I got a little toot of some fluid film here. Slow down that corrosion process. Hopefully. We'll have to put our dust shield back on. Right, that's the way it went, right? Right. We've got our new bearing. Get rid of this little guy. Make sure you get the wire in the appropriate orientation when you put it through, which in this case, you know, the wire faces back towards a little slot here inside the spindle. If you mess it up, just take the bolts out and spin it around. But just be mindful not to get it pinched. That should slip in nice and easy. If you gotta force it, you're doing it wrong. Definitely take the time to clean out that corrosion. We'll just stick our bolts back in. Get all three of them started before you go slamming it down, you know. Pretty standard stuff. Now we're going to take and snug them up. Have to rotate it here a little bit. Torque them to factory specs, of course. We have to put our wire back in the bracket. So these connectors are pretty susceptible to water intrusion. So make sure that you do clean that connector off like we did, you know, blow it off or whatever. Make sure it's clean and dry when you put it together. Like I said, they do have a tendency to collect the green crusties in there. We're still waiting on Napper to show up with our rotors. Ordered them at the same time I ordered the wheel bearing. They could be a little bit slower. Maybe they're busy today. We'll grab a torque wrench. Oh, I got it in me. There we go. Oh, where's my hose? Where's my hose at? There it is. We'll get our caliper here prepared while we're waiting, I suppose. Before we push the piston in, I just want to clean the face of it a little bit. Caliper ears gears look pretty clean. I'm not worried about them. If you try to clean the crusties off the face of the piston after you push it in, you risk or increase your risk of damaging the boot. In this case, the dust boot is intact. Like I say, once you push it in, you know, that boot gets a little closer to that edge, so it's always easier to do that prior to pushing it in. I do have caliper retraction tools. I like not to walk over to the other side and get them. Just push it in here with some C-clamps. Now, if your caliper doesn't push in nice and easy, you're going to need a new one or rebuild the one you have, whatever you're fancy. So we can see the little boot is stuck out on this because there's air captured behind it. So what you can do, if you can do it very gingerly, is you can reach behind them with a pick. Now, when you're sticking your pick back there, keep it facing right towards your caliper piston because you don't want to hit the boot. You don't want the folds in the boot. What you want to do is get back to the groove where it sits, wiggle your pick underneath it if you can, and then pick up on it just enough to push the air out and work that air bubble around. It'll relieve the air out. And there you go, then pull your pick out. But like I say, be careful, because if you've got a real sharp pick, now this one here is pretty dull. You know, the tip of it's pretty well broke. Like I say, keep it facing towards the piston, work it back there. You'll feel the groove in the piston where the caliper boot sits. Just get underneath it or push it to the side just enough to let the air out and you're good to go. So I've mentioned probably 1,000 times, you have to clean your caliper brackets where the brake pad sits, or where the hardware sits, because they tend to build rust here, squeezes the pads. Everything seizes up now. 99% of the time I use my sandblaster. If you want to do it at home, don't have a sandblaster, more than likely, I just use a square file. Now you just want to remove the rust and not the material. So we're going to go around each edge of the caliper bracket here. Doesn't take much. Get the rust off. Now, some people have mentioned that they just use a wire wheel. In my experience, using a wire wheel simply polishes the rust. If you bust the rust off and then hit it with the wire wheel, it seems to work better. And this is not the proper way to use a file. Also, just FYI, we'll clarify that. Shouldn't drag them backwards. So when you do that, you get the big chunks off. I'll hit it on the wire wheel here. Don't get your boot tangled up in the wheel. Whoa, or your finger. That's what it will look like when you're done. Nice and shiny. If I could get it in the camera angle here somewhere. And then you're good to go compared to, you know, what you had. And always buy a low horsepower wire wheel in case you get your digit in it. Now we have both sides complete. We'll take and inspect our pins. Make sure they're clean, lubricated. You don't want to go overboard on the lube, as we've mentioned in the past. These ones look fantastic. They move nice and easy. Rubber boot back on there. Critical step. I don't know what step number it is, but we're going to lube the caliper bracket, as it is our habit to do, before we put the hardware on, to hopefully prevent rust buildup, or at least slow it down anyways. So our pad should come with new hardware. Always replace your hardware. Make sure it's quality hardware though. Some cheap pads come with cheap hardware that are just steel. Now these are stainless, so they don't get rusty. And that's kind of the key we're going for. Get them set on. They should fit nice and easy. Clip on. Some cases they click on a little bit tighter depending on the application. Grab a couple pads. Now these come with squealers you have to put on yourself, which I've never really cared for this design myself, because typically they'll rust off before they're needed. I'm going to stick that on the inboard pad. That's typically the one that hits first. Line our pads up. A lot of times you can just stick them in and turn them and stand them straight up. Now they should move, you know, nice and easy with your fingers. If you have to fit them or, you know, force them, then you're doing it wrong. You know, clean out your bracket. Now some cheap quality brake pads, wiggle this back out of there, where they stamp the backing plate, there'll be, you know, big knards of metal hanging off it that you've got to touch off with a file. I would probably personally recommend that you buy a better quality pad, in my opinion. And they should fit nice and easy. Like I say, when you grab them, they should be able to move them in and out very easily with your fingers. All right, finally, the rest of our parts showed up. Well, Napper's running on the slow train today. So I like to coat the face of our hub with a little bit of fluid film. My retainers here. Got the new Napper Ultra Premium. Advanced didn't have any of the coated rotors in stock, so we grabbed some of these. Napper. Now these retainers, if you elect to use these, you have to make sure you have the provision in your wheel, so the wheel actually has to be machined so it'll fit around these. If you put these on a rotor and the wheel has just a flat face, it's going to hit these and bind, and your wheel's actually going to bolt on cockeyed. So just a little FYI. I don't want you making that mistake. So we can bolt our caliper bracket on. The coated rotors are nice. They don't have any of the oily goo on them that you have to clean off. Been using them for a couple of years now, or almost 2 years, I guess. And I've seen some pretty positive results as far as corrosion goes. So I try to use them when we can, when they're available. They are a little bit more spendy than your standard rotor. So these have a unidirectional finish, as a single directional finish instead of the non-directional that they put on the other rotors, which ultimately you're supposed to have better contact right out of the box. Is it single directional? I don't know what they call it. Prior to installing our caliper, we want to grease up the face of our piston. We want to, any metal to metal contacts that we're going to have, even though these pads are shimmed. This makes all the difference in the world as far as noise is concerned and corrosion. So I grease the ears of the caliper. Of course, make sure they're cleaned off prior to doing this. You don't want to spread a bunch of grit and junk around in there. And you don't have to go hog wild, just a light layer of caliper grease. Grab our bolts. Get her lined up here. Alright, who took my socket? Imagine that, it was right where I left it. And there we go, your caliper should move nice and free when you're done. Naturally pump up your brakes before you take it for a shimmy, or you'll go on one little 20-second wild ride if you don't. Alright folks, that's it. Hopefully the new camera shows our videos just as good as our old camera did. It's going to take some getting used to. It's got some got some funk to it that I got to get used to. At any rate, make sure you pump up your brakes. Of course, put your wheel back on if you're going to drive it. Check your brake fluid, all that business. Make sure your ABS lights out and everything when you drive it, of course. And we'll leave it at that. So find us on our socials, find us on Patreon, subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that yet. Click that notification bell, and just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.